Hello friends, today we will go through the action list editor and all the action lists we have here. First off, there's two different types of action lists. There are either these interactions that are present only in the scene that you're in, or there are these that go into the asset folder, adventure creator, action list. These can be called from any scene. So basically if you have some type of action list that can happen anywhere, this is the way to go. But this is good for showcasing what all different types of things do we have. I haven't even used all of these yet, but let's go through this in order. First off, action type action list. Check running. If some specific action list is running, you can select it here. And you can also select the source if it's in a scene or an asset file. You can comment. This is just, you could display these in console, comment whatever you want, whatever. And this will go into the console as this comment. Then we have kill. This immediately kills the running action list. If something specific happens, you can kill, you can just stop right there. Pause or resume. We can pause or resume some specific action lists. We can run action lists. This is what you should use for asset files when you have some like action list that you want to, like an interaction that you want to run an asset file action list, then you can choose it from here. Run in parallel. I think this goes to a maximum of 10 different lines of things that all go at the same time. Now from the action lists, I haven't used check parameter, set parameter, or wait for proceeding. I suppose the wait for proceeding is some sort of like wait for this to happen and then continue, or like something like that. Then we have the camera. We have a crossfade. You choose your new camera. It crossfades from your current camera to the camera you have chosen here. You can choose the transition time and the transition curve. Wait until finish if you want, or you can just click here to return to the last gameplay. So if you have changed your camera and you want to go back to gameplay camera, just click here and choose your wanted parameters here. Then there is also fade. If you want to fade in or out your camera, you could use a custom fade texture. You could select it to be instant. So it just turns to black. And also we have all these fade times and transition curves and everything. Behavior when paused. For example, if you press escape when the fade is still on, you can choose here whether it will cancel the fade, whether it will hold, whether it will hide or continue the fade action. Rotate third person. You can rotate your third person camera here, but we won't go into that too much. There is a shake option. You can choose how intensive the shake is and how long it will happen. There's split screen. You can choose two different cameras and you can select if they're orientated horizontally or vertically, or as an overlay. Then you choose just their sizes and where they're positioned. This is pretty cool. I haven't used this myself yet, but it could be used to create some cool effects. And then switch is just change your camera. Choose your transition time, whether the move method is any of these. I usually use smooth and wait until finish, for example. Okay, those were the camera action types. And then we go into character. Okay, character animate. This is very self-explanatory. Basically, you choose your character. Is it a player or just some random character that you want to animate? If you want to animate a character, they do have to have either the player or the NPC script, so this will recognize them. Then you just choose your methods. Play custom, stop custom, reset to idle, set standard. You can change the animations here on set standard. You can change any of these. You can change their sounds or speeds. You can play custom animations. Then you can change rendering here. You can change your sorting, your sprite scale, sprite direction, or sorting map. And you can also rebuild directions if there happens to be some sort of animation that needs to have more facing directions. Then there's just this basic change direction, affect player, choose any of the directions that you have, or select your random NPC and face them to the direction you want. This is very commonly used in my games when you want characters to change the direction they're facing. Very self-explanatory. Okay, face object. This, if you want, for example, your player to face a specific object, then you choose it here. Hold object. This is something that I haven't used yet, but this action is actually not compatible with this character's animation engine, so I suppose this has something to do with 3D, so you can actually hold objects and then move them around, probably something like that. That goes into the 3D world. We are not there yet. Move along path. You can choose your character to move along a path. And the path can be made in the scene manager. Add new. Then we have a path here. We can change the paths. Let's say node wait time is 1. We create a node. And then we move the node, and now when we make our character walk this path, it will walk from 0 to 1. It's very simple. Teleport to start, wait until finish. You can decide what works for you. Move to point. Now this is almost like the same, but this just specifies a single point that you want your character to move to. And if you're using pathfinding, the option is here. If you're not using pathfinding like me, you have to check this off. Because if you don't use pathfinding, let's say our marker is here and the player is here. Since we are not using the pathfinding, or pathfinding nav mesh is only this shape here. So if the pathfinding is on, the character will only walk inside this area. So you want to set that off if you're not really using that. So the character will then ignore this and just walk to your specified marker. NPC follow. This is quite heavy in my opinion. It taxes your machine a lot. It could also be that I haven't been using this correctly, but all of these update frequencies and the distances and everything, they have to calculate this at all times, and this heavily I think this requires the nav mesh to be set up correctly, so they actually know where they can walk and they won't then walk on walls and stuff like that. Yeah, in my opinion, I don't really like using this because it has been so heavy on the computer. So I would use some custom like move routes and stuff like that. For now, probably more for like very simple maps with very simple nav meshes. You can't really do too complicated things with this. Okay, rename. This is very self-explanatory. Once again, just change your player's or some character's name. Very simple. Switch portrait. This changes the portrait graphic of the character that you choose when they're talking, if you have your portrait graphics shown. Okay, let's move on to container. This is again something that I haven't really used, but technically this is just it's a very basic thing. You just choose, you have to add a container from the scene manager. You can add new, choose this container, and then you need to have inventory items. Let's say you want to add like a spoon to your to your container, then you would choose your item from here. And we can also check if some inventory item is in this container, or we could just open this container like so. And we can also choose here as open in set element. So this would choose what kind of graphic it would show in the menu. Okay, dialogue. Play speech. Let's say player line says, "Hello world." Here we go. We can choose all these things here. .animate, play in background. Wait time offset. Sometimes when you scroll around like quickly like this, you might accidentally hit one of these wait time offsets, and then if you have this like in 4, it will wait 4 seconds before this dialogue appears. So be wary of that. I usually never need this. Okay, then rename option. You can this renames conversation options. This starts the conversation. We have to add again. We have to add a conversation from the scene manager. It's right here. Okay, I accidentally added 2, but that's fine. You can override options here, which is what I usually use. You can add your dialog options here. It goes into the logic under conversations. You can add your dialog options from here. You could either choose your dialog options here and have your things in different action lists, but I usually do override actions. I think it's easier to just have have your conversation in a single action list. So you could choose your dialog options here. What happens when you select one of these? Okay, more in dialogue. Stop speech. This just stops and or forces off all kinds of dialogue. Toggle option. If you want to either set on or off some specific option in a conversation, choose this. And then wait for speech. Wait for someone to stop speaking, basically. Documents. Here we will add or remove a document. We don't have any documents, but we have to create them in the AC game editor. In inventory, manager, documents, create. Hello. This document is named hello. This will add the document hello to your documents. Then, if you want to open this document, you want to open it here, and you could basically use wait until close if you want to like open some sort of letter, and then when it's closed, something happens. You can also check if you have this specific document. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. You just need to basically do a lot of like playing around with these different options. You can change the timescale here. Never used that. Check platform. What platform you are on. This is useful if you have multi-platform games, but usually, at least for me, I'm making games only for desktop for now, or Windows. So technically, I don't need this. Control timeline. I've never used timelines in my life, so it would play some sort of timeline that you have created, but I don't use this. Okay, end game. This you choose here if you want to just quit game. This just shuts the game down. This loads autosave. For example, if you've died in your game, and then this loads the autosave. This resets the current scene that you're in, and this restarts the game, and you choose what scene you want to restart to. For example, it would, if I want to restart game to the title screen, that you just add your title screen name, the name of the title screen scene. And then if you're doing this, you should probably also reset your menus. Manage systems. Here you can either change your movement method, or either enable or disable cursor input, interactions, draggables, menus, movement, camera, triggers, player, saving. This has a lot of different options here, but for example, if you want your player to not be able to save in a specific place, you choose this. If you don't want your player to be able to move in a specific place, use this. If you want to hide your cursor, use this. It's like most of these, you can figure them out. You will probably need to use tutorials, or like if you choose about and then manual, this will open the Adventure Creator manual here. This is your friend. Use it, please. And also check out the tutorials. And remember to check for updates every once in a while. We are up to date, so that's great. Play movie clip. If you have your own movie clips, you play them here. Very self-explanatory. Wait. Okay, this is also one of the most used actions that I have. It's a simple wait in seconds. Wait 1 second and then do something else. Okay, then we have Hotspots. Here we can choose to change interactions. For example, I want to change the use direction to be disabled, so you cannot interact with this action again. Check interaction enabled or disabled. This checks if the hotspot interactions are either enabled or disabled. Enable, disable. This enables or disables the entire hotspot. You can also affect children if you need to. And we also have rename. If you want to rename one of your hotspots to say like cat. Maybe a dog transforms into a cat. Who knows? Then there's the input action type. We can check for a specific button, axis, single tap or click, double tap or click. And once that happens, let's say when we press F, then something different happens entirely. Then there's QTE. You can have different types of QTEs in your game if you want. Single key press, hold key, button mash, single axis, thumbstick rotation. But these require you to have a specific thumbstick rotation. This will obviously only work if you have a controller. Then you choose the menus to display if you have those. Durations of the QTE, wrong button fails if you have them, and such as this. Then we also have toggle active. We don't have active inputs. This has a typo for some reason. But if we have active inputs, we can create them here. So basically what this means, if you want something specific to happen when you press a specific button anywhere in the game, you would do this thing. But it's a more complicated thing, so we are not going to go too much into that. Okay, those were the inputs. Then we have inventory. Again, we should have some inventory items if we wanted to. Let's say it's a dog toy. Okay, add a dog toy to your inventory. There we go. We can choose to add them to the front of your inventory if you want. You could also remove either a specific item or the last selected one, or replace this item with that item. You could change the interaction of the dog toy. Every inventory item can have different interactions. Use, examine, unhandled interactions. You could make all of these be, say, something custom, and this changes those interactions if you have them. Check if you're carrying a specific item or the number of items carrying is equal, not equal, less than, more than. Like so. And also, if you can carry multiple of some item, then you can query the count here. So if we have, let's say, 10 dog toys, then something happens. Check selected. This selects if the selected item is a specific item in specific category or non-selected. We can also, we can have different item categories. I haven't actually used those myself, but we are not going to go into that. There's also crafting. If you want to either create a recipe or clear recipe, you want to use the crafting like the basic menu that comes with AC game editor. It has these menus that are like ready to use basically. You should like customize these, but there is the crafting menu. You have to like see how this works first before going into these crafting things. Property to variable. If you basically want to get property of some item, you do it here. This is more complicated stuff. Also select. If you want to select a specific item, you do it here. Here's all the menu things. We can change the state of the menu. So for example, turn on the menu, turn off the menu, hide menu element, show menu element, lock menu, unlock menu, add journal page, or remove journal page. So basically, if we want to turn on the menu options, we do it here. Either have the transition or not. Then we can, after that's happened, we can turn off the in-game menu. And then we could also hide menu element. If we want to hide, for example, in the options menu, we want to hide this SFX slider. You can do it here, so it won't show anymore. So it happens like this, it just hides it. Very interesting stuff. Then we can also do the opposite thing, show menu elements. Or either then we could also lock the menu, so you cannot open them. So for basically we could lock the pause menu, so you cannot enter the pause menu. And here is the opposite state, change type, unlock menu. And there's the add journal page and the remove journal page, but we are not going to go into journals quite yet, because they are also a bit more complicated stuff. We could also check the number of slots in a specific menu. So let's say we could check if we have like 5 save slots currently in use or something like that. We could check the state. Is the specific menu visible? Is this specific menu locked? Is this specific element in this specific menu visible? Maybe it's not. Then we do this. That's for the menus. Movable. If you want to be able to have something as a movable, it needs to have, let's say, hold on, I will choose some random object from here. Maybe this trash is a movable. We will need to add the movable script to it, so it detects that it is actually movable. And check held by player. I think this is also the 3D thing. Set jack position. If the movables have a track, then you could check these here or toggle them. And if you actually want to move your movables like through an action list, you need to have you can use the transform option. Add your movable there. It will automatically add this constant ID, so it remembers its place. It does this. Move it to your specific point in the map. Some of these are probably not very easy to understand while I'm going through them like this without having too many like examples, but I'm just going through basically all the things that you can do with these. So basically, object, you can add or remove a specific object. You could add some prefab here. Let's instantiate the arrow prompt, whatever. We can also animate our objects. So this is for like doors and chests and whatever. Anything that's not a character, an NPC or the player. You can choose the animation engine here. Whatever you use, you have to pick it. And choose whatever you want to play. Okay, so I'm not sure what the plane shape does, because I haven't used it. So let's skip that. Call event. If you have some custom event in one of your scripts, you could do it here. You can change the material of whatever your object is. You can change the tint map. You can check for presence. Is this object present in the scene? You can check their tag. If the game object has a tag of player, then do something. We could check the visibility. Is some specific object visible in the scene or in the camera? Very useful. We could fade the sprite. This also needs the sprite fader script. So let's say the trash one needs to be able to fade it. So we have to add the sprite fader, and then we move it here. Fade in, fade out, choose the time, wait until finish, whatever you want to do with it. Highlight. I haven't used this either, but I suppose, yeah, object to highlight, non-highlight. I think this also requires an highlight script. There's a lot of, you can find all of these scripts by just add component and search for it. It should do something like this, like brighten, highlight the object. But I'm not entirely sure how this works again, so you have to go and try it out yourself. You could record the transformers of some object. Record their position, rotation, scale, and you can save them into a variable if you need to. You can send a message. If you, for example, want to turn off the trigger, you do it here. Turn off this trigger. Don't want to activate this trigger anymore. So you can do that. There's also turn on, turn off, interact, kill, custom. You could set this game object you're choosing to be a parent of a specific other game object, like so. You could teleport. This is very useful. You want to teleport, let's say, the wolf out of the screen. So let's do the off-screen marker. There we go. It's now out of the screen. You can also teleport the player with this. Very useful. It's kind of like something that you thought would be in the character menu when you want to teleport your character, but it is actually in the object. And same goes for the NPCs. If you want to teleport an NPC out of the scene, use this. Find your NPC, add it here, and teleport it out. Transform. This we went through previously. Visibility. If you want to not have something visible or make them visible, choose that. Okay, then we go into objectives. We also have to add these from the inventory menu manager. Objectives, create a new objective. And we create the objective, find the girl, or whatever. And then we add it to the title also. You can check the objective state. Is the find girl inactive, started, or completed? You can also add a new state, let's say failed. The state type is here. Now we also have the failed option. Okay, we can also check the state type. This is because this is basically the same thing for now for us, but you can also add more like states of completion, for example. Let's say completed with 1 hit and completed with no hits. Let's say some sort of parameter checks if we have been hit or not. So this, then we can check the state either here, if 1 hit does something, with no hits does something else. But if we want to check the state type, then both of these are actually in the completed state type. You can also set the state. Let's set the find the girl to started, or completed, or failed. Objectives are pretty simple. Now we have the player. This action requires player switching to be allowed. So here we can check if the current player is this specific player. And you can also switch the player here if you have the player switching allowed. You can constrain your player. Don't allow, for example, up movement. You can only move down or left or right. If you have a side scroller that you shouldn't be able to go up or down, you should probably disable the up or down movements. So you will also only have left or right. You can also change if you can jump, change the cursor lock, change if you always walk, always run, or player choice, and if they are affected by gravity. Here you can also, I think, constrain the player to a specific path. Here we can also lock or unlock to a path. Can move both ways, snaps to start. These are interesting. I've never used these, but you could use these to make some interesting effects. And we also have the teleport in inactive. This also requires the player switching to be set to allowed. Then we have save. This is very self-explanatory. Check if we have any of these things. Number of save games, number of profiles. Is saving possible? Then do this. And we can also manage our profiles. We don't really have save game profiles enabled here, but if you need those, you can do those. You can manage your saves. You could, for example, if you're doing an Iron Man mode, where the game like saves automatically, but if your character dies, then you should like delete the save. Save or load. This is very basic. Load, specific save, or just the autosave. Continue from last save, override existing save, or save a new game. Here we can also set language options, subtitle options, SFX volume, speech volume, music volume. You can set all of these to whatever you want. Then there's the scene. We could add or remove a scene. I don't know, why would you want to do that? You can change the settings of a scene, any of these settings. You could check if your current or previous scene is equal to not equal to this. You can check the attributes of the scenes. We don't have any variables for our scenes, but here we can also switch the scene. This is also one of the most used things. Usually you would want to choose your scenes by names and not numbers, because if you have these numbers set up, then you have to have your scenes always in the specific order, and you have to remember those. Just use names, it's easier. And if you want to use any of these options, you can. Switch previous. I think this switches the scene to the previous scene that we were in. Sound options. You can change the player's or NPC's footstep sounds. You can change the volume of any object. You can play the sound from any object, or fade in, or fade out, or stop. You can play the ambience from here. You need to have some music or ambience added to your ambience or music storages, so you can do that. The soundtrack has these. Add new clip. You can play, stop, crossfade, resume last stopped, and the same basically for the music also. You can play a one-shot sound. I usually don't use this because let's say for example your camera shakes at the same time as this one shot. This one shot always plays from, I think, the center of the screen. It creates a new thing that sounds, but if the camera is shaking, the sound goes like this, and then the audio plays more from here and then more from here. And this just fucks up with your, like, how the audio sounds. So usually what I do is just play a sound from your object. Don't really use the play one shot. It might give us some problems. Set mixer snapshot. Now this has something to do with the audio mixers. I haven't used those. Third party, if you have a third party action type, you use them here. There is, as a default, there's Cinema Director and Playmaker, but I haven't used those. Then variables. These are also very useful, and you need these a lot. Let's say you want to check if this global variable is equal to true or false, or whatever the type of the variable is. Is it Boolean, integer, string, float, pop-up, vector3, game object, unity object? Haven't really used the last four, only these, but you know what those are. If you are here, you should know what these are. Boolean, yes or no, integer, a number, a full number, string, some type of text, and float is a decimal number. You can check them here. You could also check random number here. So this is basically RNG, random number generator. Possible values, I'm not sure how many different options you can have here. I'm not sure how far this can go, actually. I guess it can go however far you want. There's now 100 different options that can happen. Let's turn it down a bit. You could also prevent the same value twice. Save the last value if you need to. Variable check random. If you want random thing to happen, do this. We can copy a variable values. I haven't used the pop-up switch, so let's skip that. I haven't used run sequence. Number of possible values. Run on a loop, save sequence value. Usually what I use is check if the variable is this or that, check random number, or set your values here to whatever you want. 1.5. Yes, that's what we want. Okay, those were variables. Then there's also custom. If you have custom, they will show here, but I don't have any at this moment, so we can't open this menu. But for example, one of my custom scripts is that it activates a particle effect. So for example, that would be here. Okay, those were all of the... I don't know how easy this is to follow, because I don't really have any real examples for these. But this is just a list of things that you can do with the action list. So there's a lot, as you can see. Too much to comprehend at this moment, I'm sure, but like you need to look through this yourself. You need to experiment a lot and see what works for you and what doesn't. But yeah, this was it for this video. Let's see what we figure out next time. Bye for now.